to BPW Goes Digital. This initiative is to bring BPW into a digital era. This initiative is started by Dr. Ann Hilke and myself with the presenters and trainers who are young members from across the world. The topic for today is the branding of BPW, and the speaker is Valerie Lim from BPW Singapore. She is a young BPW member and also the first vice president of BPW Singapore. Valerie is the head of business development at a company, Curators Collective, a brand management agency that has a footprint in Singapore and Philippines. Leveraging her degree in psychology from the National University of Singapore with her experience in the media as Miss Universe Singapore 2011 and the National Director of Miss Universe Singapore, she manages campaign for her clients. She is a skilled digital marketer with a keen eye for health, fashion, and fitness. With this, I would like to welcome our speaker, Valerie Lim. Now the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Nilima. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today in this BPW Goes Digital webinar. As Nilima mentioned, we will be talking about the branding of BPW, and what I will share today is some tools for building a digital brand. How this presentation will go is I will give an overview of what branding is, after which we will then use these general principles to touch on how we can then seamlessly build a digital brand for our clubs and our associations. Now, let me get right to it. Before I give you the tools, let's start on something very important. Why is branding crucial? First and foremost, it offers instant recognition. What this means is that when your branding is done right, whenever you mention your company's name, when people see your logo, they know exactly what you do, what you stand for, and ideally what products or services you provide. And especially in a competitive world like today, it offers you time, it saves you time, and it captures the audience's attention rather than you spending precious time trying to explain what you do. Now, let's do a quick exercise. These companies, I'm sure you're all quite familiar. Did you have any problems identifying any of these? No, you see, and what you may have noticed is that there are no words to any of these logos. And the second thing is, I didn't give you very much time, but you probably already recognize these because that's the power of branding. And because these companies have done branding right, they've also developed your trust. You know that they are legitimate businesses that you can trust, and you know what to expect whenever you use their services or even use their products. So that's the reason why we do branding. Now, let me go into what is branding. Branding is a process that marketers use to help create identities for entities. I use the word identity to encompass companies, organizations, even countries. So national branding is something that Singapore is one of the first to pioneer. And this model that Singapore has used is now used all over the world. The goal of branding is to differentiate and give personality to your organization, to your company, even to yourself. So like I said, these general principles can actually span across personal branding, professional branding, even nation branding. So now branding is a process where you develop elements to differentiate and hopefully make you stand out from your competitors. With BPW, let's narrow in on the branding of BPW. We've generally had quite good success offline. Most people know what we do because of our name, Business and Professional Women. And it's also an international organization, BPW International. How do we then create a seamless experience for the people in our association and for the audience out there? We want to create a seamless online digital presence that matches the offline experience. Here are some essential things that I think you need for building a digital brand. With regards to the name, it's not something we can change because we have a unified BPW brand name that we work with. The idea is how do we then instill a character for each of our organizations or each of our clubs at your federation, your club level. The name may not differ too much, but it should be the beginning of a conversation. So rather than just have it as a name, it's like when you're naming your child, it should stand for something. So this should be the beginning of a conversation. When somebody mentions, hey, business and professional woman, that should spark something in them. Moving on to the logo. Again, with BPW, we will not be able to change our logo too much because we do have one logo that we work with. But if you're working with other campaigns, we would like to then see the logo of BPW incorporated in that. And just to share some general tips with regards to logos, color psychology is key. And I'm not going to delve too much into this because with BPW, we have our yellow color, which represents warmth, optimism, friendship. But when we use other colors to represent our campaigns or EDM materials, do take note of what the color might represent. Red is one of the most commonly used color because it also relates to flames. And with colors, a lot of times, they represent something in the natural world. So blue is most often related to calmness because it reminds you of the sky and the ocean. So with red, red is very often used to represent passion, danger, heat, energy, and action. And you will realize that in the English language, this is used to represent certain things and to give meaning to the words after. For example, red carpet, which represents luxury. What about red light district? Something exciting, action going on, which leads me to my next point. We have to be mindful of the content that we put out there. So when I mention content, same with your name, this content that we use on our BPW platforms should foster conversations. It needs to be able to get people excited and have them talk about it, which then leads them to come back to your website, to your social media platforms. So once you have your corporate identity set, which is the visible part of your club, the name, logo, even things like your name cards, you want the design to be consistent with whatever you have already set out with your name and your logo. Then your website should be a manifestation of these ideals, and your social media too. I won't touch too much on social media because Tommy has already done that in a previous webinar last month. Please go check it out on YouTube. So with website and with your social media, they should then have the essence of what your club represents based on your name, your logo, and like I mentioned, your type of content. So how you are perceived on these platforms is really up to you. You can control it by making sure you know exactly what kind of content you put out there, what type of voice you use. Punctuation is also important. If you want to portray a professional looking website, you want to portray a professional looking organization, use of punctuation is important. And it's these tiny things that actually make a difference. Types of content also relates to the videos or articles or quotes, how you transmit your information. I mentioned event planning here because as a network, we do have our offline events. Now, the idea is that we want to have these offline events translated online. As a network now, what we've done is like this BPW Goes Digital, we have moved our international events online, but also at a local level, if we've done that, how do you then share that information to your website and social media platforms? These are the avenues to which you build your brand. It's that once you have your little Lego bricks, you then share them on the different platforms because these are your little, these are the tools that you will need to promote your club. So with events, right now, there's not too many physical ones, but do choose a suitable location. So rather, depending on what kind of event you're looking at, do you choose a nightclub? Do you choose a gala, a ballroom, or do you choose more like co-working space? So these things, again, can reflect on your brand. Develop relevant content. Relevant in the sense of what do your members and audience want, but also relevant to the times. For example, I think this BPW Goes Digital is a very good relevant content, especially in this whole COVID situation where everybody has to go online, and we are now taking the steps to equip ourselves with the right skills. So moving on to the next point here for events. Again, like I mentioned, because it's the devil is in the details. So something like, if you have the different types of food, if you want to portray, again, let's say portray the image of an international organization, perhaps we can think about offering a range of international food at your events. After saying all of that, once you have your website, you spend money, you spend time on your website, you spend time building your content, you have your social media all set up, you got your name, you got your logo. Yes. Is that it? Is that the end all be all? Is branding done? No, it is not. Branding is a process, and it's an ever evolving process, because as you evolve, your association also evolves. And the goal of branding, like I said, is for differentiation and to give your club personality. It's about recognition. But there's a difference between branding and being a brand. When you become a brand, you are close to heart to your members. And that's how you gain loyalty. It's because you are significant in their lives and you have made an impact. I would like to bring up the example of Apple. So Apple, rather than just being branding, they've done a great job of branding. They have the white apple on their phones. Everything is sleek. They have a consistent color. So that's great. They have a simple name, easy to remember logo. And their products are also very well designed. But more than that, they are a brand. And you will not be able to convince Apple fanatics to use anything else. Why is that? Because Apple plays an important part in their lives. It's changed and it's given meaning or impacted their lives in one way or another. Whether it's helping them connect with friends, whether it's being a cool status, that's where significance is important. So let's think about how our clubs or associations, have they made an impact in our members' lives? Well, now I'm going to tell you what's the secret to then being a brand. Igniting emotion. So like I mentioned with Apple, people feel something when they unbox their brand new iPhone or their brand new laptops. For an association, it's not as clear cut because we don't have a physical product, which can then have that kind of spark joy. But what is it that your members want? What is it that will set their pants on fire? Speak to their values, ignite emotion with conversations, with the events that we plan. And that's how you make them feel things. I'm sure our members join not for a tangible product. They join because they care about doing something. And because, like I said, we have a unified BPW brand, which is about women empowerment. Hopefully everybody knows that. We then want to have our clubs be in line with that. Maybe give it a little bit more character of your own. So for example, in Singapore, with our women empowerment, what we do is we work mainly with professional development and skills development. I know for some other clubs internationally, what they do is probably they will be able to work with UN to further women's rights. So in Singapore, we are quite lucky that women have opportunities in the workspace. We are able to lead organizations. So women empowerment can mean different things in different countries, and it can mean different things to different people. So when you do your events, or when you speak to people, or the types of content that you put out, I would like for it, hopefully, to ignite emotion. So how I suggest that is to then build a story of what your club or association means, and then showcase leaders and members, because everybody has an interesting story. And we can all take time and effort to learn each other's story and then build relationships, hopefully understand where and what our motivations are. The next thing is to create value. So the first part with, once you share your story, once you share what people value, what your values are. For instance, is it honesty, integrity, transparency? That's the values for the organization. Talking about the next kind of value is, what kind of value does your club offer? The first and foremost, easiest one that we talk about is tangible value. So tangible value for your members. If you pay X amount of membership fee, that allows you access to maybe 10 different events, and the events could be worth a certain amount. So that's where it's quantifiable. But again, what is something else that helps you become close to heart? It is the intangible value that your club offers. Is it the friendship? Is it the support? Is it perhaps, yes, I have access to events, but I get to meet Hollywood celebrities there. That's the kind of intangible value I'm talking about. A very clear example is Amazon. Amazon has tons of products online. Sometimes the prices may not be cheaper, but they offer convenience. They deliver to your door and they deliver in a very, very short time. So the intangible value of Amazon is convenience. So now let's think about what the intangible value of our network is. And people don't just join the club for how many events they can attend, or how much the membership fee is. It's really what intangible is. So here's a quick exercise. I would like for you to just go through quickly in your head. You can take a screenshot or you can take some notes. So understand your organization, where it is right now. Know your strengths and weaknesses. What are the values? What do you want to portray? Is it connectivity, support, integrity, fundraising, helping people? So those are the values. I think it would be good to define at least 3 to 5, and then define the tangible value offered. For example, your X number of membership fee allows you to be a member for 1 year. And then if you join for 2 years, maybe that's much cheaper. So that's a tangible value. And then define the intangible value. So this is something you probably have to sit down with your EXCO members or even get feedback from your current members. Value is not something that value is something that is in minds of your audience. And brand image is something in the mind of your audience. This is not something that you can completely control. What you can control is your brand, the different elements of your brand, like the name, the logo, the content. But really your brand value and what they perceive is in the mind. So you need to then reach out to your members to get feedback. Next step, align every element to this first step. Once you've got all of that set out, align your website, align your social media, your strategy of how you're going to put out content, how often you're going to put out content. Events should then also reflect the same kind of values. And then lastly, keep sharing. Because branding is a process, an ever-evolving process, and you will hear that companies or even nations go through rebrands. Because as you move with the times, people care about different things. And if you, as an organization, do not care about what your members care about, then that's where we unfortunately lose out. So I think this point is very interesting. Whoever tells the best story and makes a difference wins. So don't be afraid to share your story, because that's where the intangible value comes, because we learn from each other's experience. So the key takeaways for this branding webinar is that branding is a process, and it must change with the times. So as an organization, we have to be flexible. BPW has an offline success of over 100 years. But even now at this time with the COVID, we've had to learn new skills. We've had to evolve. But we still have our identity, which is women empowerment and connection internationally. So once you've gone through that exercise, the one in the previous slide, hopefully you'll be able to clearly identify what your organization's brand identity is. And then, like I said, understand your club's personality. Are you a fun club? Are you a serious club? No, BPW is a business and professional women's club organization. So I think that we should then reflect that in how the way we conduct ourselves. We should reflect that in our content. We should reflect that in our website. Once you do that, do some housekeeping and then align or realign every element as much as you can. The best branding is done when you can actually control every element. It's a little bit tricky and it will require a lot of effort and participation from all your members. But ideally there should be one person or a unified group that understands the core of what your association is about. And then create value, intangible and tangible value. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Valerie, for this wonderful presentation. Beautiful photo here too. So if you would though now take it out of screen share for us, we will start a Q&A or discussion period. Singapore really is the expert in branding, for sure. And that was a very thorough presentation. Thank you. We want to open up the floor now to any questions to Valerie. She's not claiming to be the world expert in branding, but she knows a thing or two about it, as you can see. And if she can't answer your question, we'll throw it out to all of you to find someone who can. Or maybe you have a comment about how you go about branding in your own club or federation. BPW has a brand. We're not looking to brand each one individually. But how do you go about understanding and then consistently promoting that brand? So questions or comments, who would like to jump in first? Who's the bravest among us? And be sure to unmute yourself. We do ask that you use the hand raising function if you recognize that. I've put it in the house rules. If you're doing this, I might or might not see you. We have more than one page of windows here, and many of them are not on video now, so I won't see them at all. But if you click on participants, and there's bottom right, 3 little dots, and if you click on that, you will find there that one of them says raise hand. If you raise your hand, then you will need to go back later after you've had your chance to talk. Click on that same process again and lower hand. Otherwise, if I see it, I'll do that. Okay, I see Chantal first. So Chantal, jump in, please.
Hi, I just want to thank Valerie because that was a wonderful presentation, useful for our BPW club in Trenton, Ontario, Canada, and also useful for my personal business. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much.
We're in the process of trying to do that realignment, and we're trying something radical in trying to change the name of our club so that it affects a larger geographic region that encompasses the electoral district. So this, one of the things we want to do is create a web page that reflects our new name and our updated brand as we move forward. So any recommendations you could have for that sort of project would be very much welcome.
Do you mean like the website, or what do you mean with the software to use, or?
We're actually changing the name of our club, assuming that all of the bylaws are changed and allow us to do that. But we're changing the name of our club, so we're going from 70 years of history under one name, which only covered a small community in our region, about 1/4 of the population in our region. And what we want to do is change our name to reflect the region, and we want to change it to reflect the region that people vote on, both in our province and at our federal level, so that when we're advocating for women in our community, we want to advocate for all of the community.
That's great. I think, maybe we can take this offline because I think just based on what I know, you're under BPW Ontario right now. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
All right. Yeah. So then maybe we can talk and we can discuss this offline with regards to the larger name. Maybe just to share, for us in Singapore, we have, ours is actually a Singapore BPW. So Singapore Business and Professional Women's Association, which is abbreviated to SBPWA, which is, I think, quite different from most other clubs that do BPW first. So we've done Singapore first, but we do have two other clubs under Singapore that have named themselves BPW Singapore Mandarin Chapter. So that they don't really abbreviate that, and it's just called BPW Singapore Mandarin Chapter. And then we have a BPW Singapore third chapter. So, like you said, based on, I think once you have your bylaws all set out, maybe it could be worth thinking about what kind of acronym you want, Yeah, what kind of abbreviation you want first, and then working that into the name.
Thank you. And the acronym would be H&PE, which looks like hope.
Oh, that's really nice. That's great. See, and that's something, one of the values you want to bring out to say that, hey, this is what we do. We want to be able to inspire hope in people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to just add to that, Chantel. There are limitations in what BPW affiliates can do with their names, so you will have to send that in to the International Executive Secretary and have it approved.
Thank you. We are following the processes in starting at Ontario and Canada and working our way up.
Right, I'm sure. I know you're very diligent about that, but just so everyone in the room today knows, we can't just arbitrarily name ourselves. So I know you know that, just to mention to everyone. Okay, who else would like to jump into the conversation? Don't see any hands raised. Tinuade, I'm sorry, Tinuade. Jump in. You'll have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I just want Lim to please explain the intangible values a little bit more to me. I didn't quite get that, the intangible values. Could she go back on that a bit? I had support, but what kind of support? Just so that we can apply that to our clubs. I didn't quite get that. Could she explain that a little bit more to me, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think we also have somebody, Mina, who asked about the intangible value. So intangible value is something that comes about, for example, I think when I use an example to explain it, it's probably the best. For example, Amazon, I mentioned, is they sell products, and that's the tangible thing that you buy. But the intangible value of Amazon and why it does so well is because they offer convenience, and with the algorithm of how they've done it is they actually predict what you want. So if you're buying something, maybe you're buying a tap to repair your faucet or repair in the bathroom or in the sink, then they'll say, hey, this is suggested for you. So once you buy a tap, maybe they'll suggest a toolkit. And you're like, oh yeah, actually I need that. So that's the value, the intangible value, like, oh, the convenience of like not having to think. And the fact that they can probably deliver super, super fast, whether it's the same day or next day. So that is an intangible value. Another example that I like to bring up is Borders. So Borders versus Amazon Kindle. Amazon has so many books, right? When you go into the store, it is amazing. But again, why did Amazon win in the book industry? Because when you buy or when you download a book on Amazon, they then recommend you other things. And the speed of delivery is so fast that, it obviously, going to Borders can't beat that. And as much as the fact that they may have so many more books in store, but the fact that there's nobody there to say like, hey, I think you like this author, maybe you should try this book. So that's an intangible value. Is that much clearer?
Yeah.
Valerie, can I ask you also, and then I'm going to ask everybody here, what do you think are intangible, especially since you're a first vice president, what do you think are intangible values of BPW? You mentioned relationship. What else comes to mind?
I think relationship is one thing. So then the next thing for me, obviously, is the friendship, the international friendship that right here, I mean, looking at the screen, it's just beautiful to see so many different faces from all over the country. And that's the kind of intangible value that money cannot buy.
And then I want to turn it over to all of our members. And if you don't want to speak up to this, please also put it in the chat. What do you think are the, sometimes we have a hard time answering this question. What do you think are the intangible values, the unseen, not physical, personal, one-to-one kind of values that we get from BPW?
I just want to jump in at this point. So the intangible value sometimes can lead to a tangible thing. So for example, if you have like a friendship, which really, you know, great friendship internationally, and then you decide to do business together, then that leads to a tangible quantitative value where you actually have like a business relationship and then you expand your business. But I would like to say also that, you know, when you join a network, the idea is about how much you give too, right? How much you give is about how much you receive. And ideally it's about having that kind of solid friendship first, rather than trying to mine the network and saying like, I'm going to go in with just the sole purpose of trying to do business internationally. Yes, we all want that. But I think, you know, the intangible thing is so much more worth it.
So I'm going to ask people to, as Moira has done, to contribute your ideas in the chat of what you think or you feel personally are the intangible values of BPW for you. And to give you time to think about that, if anybody else wants to speak to that topic, I'm going to first go to one of the questions that's in our chat and give this to you, Valerie. So Otoha, with whom we are both familiar, can't actually speak at the moment because she's traveling, but she has a comment here and I'll read it out so that we can also get it on the recording. So she's talking about branding, or in fact rebranding, a company or organization in our case with such a long history. So what are the challenges as well as positive take-homes? And specifically, she says, I think there's always a big conflict in rebranding while keeping the historical image. And for a brand such as ours, BPW, there will definitely be conflicting opinions. So what do you think about the idea of rebranding while retaining our, as you said, 90 years internationally, but more than 100 years, including the first national start in USA?
No, I totally agree. And I think we face some of that challenges here in Singapore. Like I said, the important thing is to understand who your club is. What is the identity of your club? What is it that you're trying to achieve? If your goal is to be aligned with women empowerment, then women empowerment is a very big field too. The idea then is to have clear goals or clear set of guidelines to what this women empowerment means to you or your organization. You know, I think in terms of rebranding, okay, so branding itself, there's obviously very, very different elements. There's your brand identity, there's your brand value. All these things are not something that you can necessarily control, but the values are something that's super in your hands. That's in your hands, and you need to be able to define that with your members. Rebranding it in a sense, I would like to say it's like a woman like me, and you want to change how you look, how we change our hair, we change our makeup, we change our clothes. You can rebrand yourself that way, but what you stand for is what your club stands for. That doesn't change. You as your personality and who you are, that is so important to you, and that will carry you throughout, you know, like the long history that we have. But how you dress may change with the times. I'm sure we've all changed our hair colors based on trends. We've changed our makeup according to latest makeup trends too. So for me, that's how I would see like rebranding someone or rebranding an organization with a long history. We should definitely keep that history, but just dress it up on the outside a little bit.
So we keep our core while changing our costume. Excellent.
Yeah.
So I've got Marie Claude next, and then Sylvia, and then Nilima. Those are all three with their hands up. So Marie Claude, just unmute.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. So I'm Marie-Claude, and I'm from Paris. You know me for some of you. And I have been with BPW International since 2008. So I started as, first I have to say that I did a doctorate on gender studies, education, the role of education in the development of women. And then I went to UNESCO, and I represented BPW at the Education for All group. And then I came really to be, because I'm not a businesswoman, so I didn't know whether I would stay with business and professional women. But still, I found my focus there in education, and I stayed. And since then, you know, thanks to, I think, also the spirit, and this is very important for me, the spirit of BPW International, I've managed to be really empowered as a woman, and now I am in leadership. And I think this is very important. And when you talk about the intangible value, yes, of course, you have the networking, which is very important. It's also very important for advocacy, because what I've been doing all these through the years, it's been advocating for women's, girls' education, empowerment, and leadership. And I think this is very important. And also I wanted to say that I think, and of course it's obvious, there are different levels. You have the international level, you have the regional level, you have the national level, and then you have the local clubs. So I think all this is very different, and this has to be taken into account. So we have common values and also different values, just like universal values for global citizenship, but still we share the same humanity. And this is very important. And also I can say about the branding and the name, because we are a member of ECOSOC and we are also a member of United Nations, all agencies, it's very important also to stick to history, because otherwise we won't be recognized. And I have managed to change the translation in French, which didn't mean anything, but it took me like 5 or 6 years, but now it's there. So if you are part of the organizations like the United Nations and all the agencies, it's quite complicated. But I understand that at the level of maybe the club or even the federation, it's different. But still, you have to have still this focus, you know, about women's empowerment, leadership, and of course, gender equality somewhere. Thank you very much for your presentation too.
You're most welcome. Thank you. I think that was very, very well put. Yeah, appreciate you sharing. I mean, I think just to share with Singapore, because previously we had like a different website that was pink in color, and we had a logo that was of a different font. So now, you know, just to add that, we've just kind of updated things. We've updated it, we've changed the website, we've used different new platform now. And I think this is also covered in some of the other webinars in terms of the different platforms that we can use to manage our membership, manage our website. So, you know, technology is always evolving. And like I mentioned, branding is an ever evolving process. And so if we, you know, we had to fight, I guess to say the old guard, where when we wanted to change the logo, we didn't change it too drastically, but it was a matter of just updating it with new fonts, you know, changing the color. So I think making small adjustments to then get to where you want, that's the process of also rebranding, right? You're just keeping up with the times, you know? So, you know, as a woman yourself, like I said, if you think about it, branding as for personal branding, and some of the principles do overlap, it's that you're always learning to constantly improve yourself.
Great. Okay, we go on to President Sylvia.
Hello to everyone. I totally agree with Marie-Claude. Is what it was my idea because for me, intangible values of BPW is, first of all, is the union of all the members, but also is what we defend in when we are in this union. And for me, is fighting for women's rights. That's it's our union, because all of us, our first objective is to fight for women's rights. That's it. What when a member, a new member is coming to our organization, I think the first idea that she has in her mind is not only networking, is why I'm coming for BPW is because I want to fight for equality, for gender equality, for pay gap, for different things, but all of them are for women's rights, and that's very important. And that's what we have to keep in mind. It's we don't have to forget what's our first objective is always to fight for women's rights. Then we can develop different ideas, but don't forget our first focus. That's that we are women, that we are business leaders, that we are, and we have to fight for women's rights.
Okay, so I've got Nilima next. And then I think I see Katarzyna doing the physical hand wave. Okay, so you'll be after Nilima.
Hello, everyone. So when we are talking about branding, I think BPW is the organization, the only women organization which has a brand of its own, because when you go back to the history of BPW International, the way BPW was branded in USA to bring, they did a lot of lobbying for all the women's rights that they are experiencing in USA right now. It is because of the women of BPW. And it was not just, BPW was not just an organization which was working with UN, but even the president of US, there was a time when they acknowledged the work that the BPW did in USA. So I think it becomes a brand. And when we talk about intangible value, I think that is one of the priority, because BPW is not a service or charity organization. It's a advocacy organization, and it's a volunteering organization. And to have so many women from around the world to be at one platform talking about same thing, it's equal world for women as well. So this is what brings us together. And when I look at UN is a brand itself. It's UN is something that brings the countries together, but whereas BPW is considered is the organization which brings women together. So I think we need to work towards that. And we have BPW has a lot of history for which we should be thankful to all the women who has done so much in the past. And the branding of BPW for this generation is that we need to understand that we are an advocacy organization, and advocacy should be our, the only product that we need to sell to the world. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nilima. Katarzyna?
Yeah. Hello to everybody. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would like to say, so BPW Poland is active in Poland for last 30 years. And what is very important for me is, so if you meet somebody who you didn't see for 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, and you meet at the street, we speak to each other like best friends. And this is a huge value of BPW. This is our branding, because our friendship. All of us are professional women, most of us. So if you need some assistance and you would like to ask for something, you are calling to BPW member because she's a lawyer and she's expert in divorces, for example, or whatever you need. You have somebody to call, and it is on a completely different basis. And this is a big advocacy for BPW, and this is a big, big value, and you call it intangible value. Do we agree with it? This is something you cannot pay for it. This is existing.
Okay. Thank you, Katarzyna. Camilla. And before you start, Camilla, I would like to put out to the rest of you that I want to just shift this into what your club or your federation is doing that you would consider branding. So let's get some personal examples after this. So please think about that. But first, listen to Camilla.
Hello, girls. I'm Camila from Brazil. I just joined BPW Florianópolis. We are in the south of Brazil a month ago, so I'm new in this business, and I'm seeing everything and the opportunity, and I'm seeing a bright path to accomplish. And it was really good to listen to you, Valerie, because I'm also a digital mom. And my mission here is to align digital presence and branding and marketing actions. So was really relevant. Thank you. And I'd like to ask you, how do you think it's possible to align these local voices with the international branding presence and values?
Sorry, can you repeat that a little bit? How do we align?
How we can align the local voices of the clubs to the national brand presence and the values of the association?
I think, so what Dr. Ann has put out is that for branding, our mission statement for BPW International is that it develops the business, professional, and leadership potential of women at all levels through advocacy, education, mentoring, networking, skill building, and economic empowerment programs and projects around the world. So that actually does encompass quite a lot of things. Although I would like to say, yeah, it's still under, like, I think like President Sylvia was saying, it's about women empowerment and how we equip people with the skills. So how that is the main unifying brand of BPW. How it's executed on each level, whether at your federation level, club level, differs because your demographic and the people that you are working with differ. You know, sometimes I just share with you what Singapore is doing is that we work, because most of our women are in professional jobs. So we work with, what we do is to develop them professionally into leadership roles. And that's where our networking sessions, our events are primarily skill training. But then we also at the same time, you know, if we want to do something for another community where it's like stay-at-home moms, that's something the club or the women in our club care about. So I think you need to understand what your members, like I think the exercise that I did, you have to understand what the strengths of your members are, you know, what they can or cannot do. And then, you know, that's where your training comes in. If all of them are great speakers, please make use of that. You know, have them volunteer to share things with your members. And then think about what are the values or what do they want to do for the community, right? Because we don't just think about ourselves. So what advocacy is important to them? Is it helping, you know, underprivileged moms, stay-at-home moms, or, you know, women who have been abused, different groups. There's so many out there. The important thing is to understand what drives your members, right? So then, you know, with the education, it's about understanding what we can offer to our members ourselves, or, you know, to people outside of our organization. Yeah, that's what I would recommend, and how then you can then reconcile and align with the global BPW brand.
Great. Thank you, Camilla, and welcome as maybe the newest member of BPW in the room.
Yeah, very excited.
We have another question in the chat from Mina Karna, who is one of our senior members in, by that I mean experience, many years of experience and on the board in Nepal. And would you all entertain this, not just you, Valerie? She's asking, how can we tie up, I think she means make the connection. How can we connect leadership with empowerment? It's not exactly branding, but if you have anything to say about that, and then maybe other people can respond in the chat.
I think Chantal replied, she says, great leaders empower their teams.
Okay, so you would just vote for Chantal's response. Okay. It's not exactly branding, but we are talking about these being two aspects of BPW's brand for sure. So Singapore, I know, is about 40 years old. I would add that FIDAPA, which is how BPW is called in Italian. So FIDAPA is BPW in Italy. And they were required to name themselves a bit differently when they were founded also 90 years ago. They're one of our first. And they have a very, very strong brand that's not only our BPW brand, but also very specifically FIDAPA. So they've taken the international brand, and then it also has a very specific meaning locally. And I've been in almost every village in Italy, I think, and we have clubs in every village in Italy. And they walk into a local place place and they just say Fidapa, and it has meaning right away. I've seen it happen a lot. So they have a lot of name recognition. I have Helen with her hand raised. So let's go to you next, Helen. And then Anu, I see, has her hand raised as well. And if others would just maybe put in the chat how your club is branding or what you're doing that you would consider to be branding.
And thank you very much. So Helen from BPW New Zealand, and all I want to share with you is we're 80 years young in New Zealand, and our image, or what we're known for, is our voice advocacy and getting women to be women leaders. So our biggest push is that through the 80 years, we're in a position now where we're invited to have a seat at the table because of the reputation and that instant recognition in civil society in New Zealand that BPW brings to the table. So I'm fortunate that I chair the International Women's Caucus. We actually talk about trade negotiations. We're the leading voice in New Zealand when we're talking about procurement, trade negotiations. We've got a meeting next week where we sit down with MFAT. So I think BPW is empowering in a whole host of aspects. And for us in New Zealand, it's about getting women in places where they influence. We don't have a huge number of professional women. We do have professional women that belong to us, but most of ours are small to medium entities. So for us, procurement, those connections globally around the image and the brand of BPW New Zealand, particularly in COVID, that we're a safe brand and you're in safe hands if you buy any products from our country. So, but also Valerie, while I've got the floor, I just want to congratulate you. What an amazing presentation. And there are so many takeaways that I can see so many of us can have that I can't believe that anyone in the audience has got nothing or not one gem that they can't take away. So congratulations, it's awesome.
Thank you so much, Helen.
And being in New Zealand, Helen is at one end of all of our BPW time zones, which means it's 1 in the morning almost for her. That's dedication. And at the moment, I think we don't have anyone in California, but that's our other time zone limit or parameter. And usually if they join, it's 5 in the morning when they join. So we have some hardcore dedication in the room. So I've got Anu next, and I think we are, that's probably the last one that we'll have speak. So if you need to say anything else, we are running out of time, and I'm not calling on people a second time. Sorry for those of you who'd like to speak a second time, for the interest of fairness. So Anu, I'll ask you to speak, and then I'll give closing remarks, and you can certainly post anything else in the chat before we do close. Anu?
Hello, I am Anu from Estonia. At first, Valerie, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. In Estonia, we have been since we are 27 years old, since 1992, and we were established under Estonian name. That means Estonian Enterprising Women. Enterprising, it means that we are not only entrepreneurs, but we are also professional women who are very active in our life. And by this name, we are very well known in Estonia. Of course, in the international level, we use BPW Estonia, but for example, when I talk about our federation in Estonia and I say BPW Estonia, then for many people it doesn't mean anything. But when I say ENA, then at once everyone knows what organization I'm talking about. So here locally we are keeping our Estonian language name, but internationally we are BPW Estonia. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Anu. So the name is certainly part of the branding, the first and most recognized part. Okay, so before I give in concluding remarks, if I can, Valerie, would you just say anything else that you'd like to say before we close?
Again, thank you all for joining me. And, you know, branding is something, I think it's a two-way street. And I really appreciate all of you sharing your thoughts and feedback on what you've done for your clubs too. So I really hope that we can all take the branding of our clubs and even of BPW into the future.
I want to thank everybody who has joined us. First of all, I want to thank our wonderful speaker, First Vice President BPW Singapore, Valerie Lim, Appreciate having you speak on this topic today, a really important topic for BPW and in fact for anyone, but including us. I also want to thank everybody who's in the room because you've joined us for this today, and we really appreciate your participation. We'd like to think you got something out of it, but we really appreciate and find it very important that you're here. We need an audience, so thanks for joining us and participating so actively. You can see this video again or share it with any of your members within 24 to 48 hours. It will be up on our YouTube channel. You can just check that channel. I recommend it. We have about 35 other videos there already. And if you just do a YouTube search, Leadership in BPW, you will absolutely find the channel there. Please subscribe to the channel too. And also, we have our Facebook page where you may have seen the event page for today, and the video will be, the link to it will be uploaded there as well. So please share the page as well as the YouTube channel with your BPW affiliate and any colleagues you may have. We want to thank you again for all of you for participating today, and we hope to see you in another webinar soon as next week, in fact. So we hope to see you there. Bye for now.